Recording has started. All right, I'll actually sit down. So I can do a little bit, so I'll just start it a little bit later. But welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Rise and Go podcast. I am your host, Michael Davis, and I wanted to share with our listeners, as always, where you can find us at Elevant. So on Instagram, we are Elevant MPLS, ELEVANT MPLS. On TikTok, we are Elevant5. At Facebook, we are at Elevant. And then for this recording, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple and all streaming platforms. But without further ado, I'd love to have our guest introduce himself.
Hey guys, I am Kevin Pitman. But some of my closest associates, they call me Coach.
Okay.
I am the varsity baseball coach here at Brooklyn Center High School. And entrepreneur. I run my own business, Pitman Lawn Care. You can find it at www.pitmanlawns.com. We do lawn care, snow removal for the Twin Cities Metro. And you could find the Brooklyn Center baseball program online at www.centaursbaseball.com.
Spell Centaurs for our listeners.
Yeah, I'll try. CENTAURS.
There you go. Well, no, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast here. I love that, we have a connection through baseball. Ted is assistant coach at McAllister with me. He's who got us introduced.
Yeah, thanks for taking him off my hands.
I know. He's been a handful. So, Ted, if you ever hear this, I'm just letting you know, man. No, we love having him. He's been a great addition to our pitching staff. He brings a lot of strategy. He brings a lot of analytics stuff that I know absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, me too.
But our kids love him at McAllister, and
Yeah.
he's already made an impact in the short time that he's been here. And I know that our pitching staff, at McAllister kids, they achieve very well in academics, especially at an institution like McAllister, and they really thrive off the analytics that Ted gives them. And it's so interesting. He has a little book. So he's always writing stuff in there. And I made the mistake. I asked him what was in there. And I was stuck in a conversation with Ted for about 15 minutes. I'm like, what are you talking about?
What is induced vertical break?
Yeah, I'm a hitter, man. Just get your foot down, swing hard, you'll be fine.
Ruin your day. You come up with all the strategy, and I'll just come in and ruin your day.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
I suppose it just kind of proves what we've known all along. I like to give Ted some guff, but it's been a pleasure building this program with one of my best friends, and it kind of confirms what we've known all along, that Ted is a college caliber pitching coach that has been running our pitching and throwing for 4 years, and so we're really thankful for the foundation that he got us on. And so pitching staff's going to be sweet this year.
That's great. And again, I think when we'll get into this a little bit more about the Brooklyn Center program. But, you guys are in growth mode, I'll say. You guys are building the program here. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a background of the Brooklyn Center baseball program?
Yeah. So I'm not from the area. I wasn't a Brooklyn Center guy. I grew up in St. Paul. I was a St. Paul Central kid. Go Minutemen.
Sure.
And I caught on playing amateur baseball with the TC Saints. You might have crossed paths with us, unfortunately for you guys, and unfortunately for us guys. And that was a hoot. What's up, Gary? And I was a pretty mediocre ball player, to put it nicely. And I really think that that's part of what makes me a really good coach. Humble brag, but I was a compensator, and so everything that I did on the baseball field, it was like my understanding of the game to compensate for my lack of skills or strength or speed. And so I actually ended up catching on coaching baseball at my old high school, and because I'm a baseball guy, I wanted to prove it. It wasn't necessarily about what it's about now. I just wanted to be involved with baseball, and I loved it almost immediately. And my first year coaching was my last year as a player, and I just really kind of took to it wholeheartedly. I grew as a coach at St. Paul Central to the point where I just really started to get the ambition to start my own program. And so I started looking for positions, applied to a few, caught wind of this position at Brooklyn Center where they were starting a program from scratch. Their baseball team went under in 2018. They didn't have a team in 2019. They would have played in 2020, but it was the COVID season.
Sure.
And so come 2021, they needed to fill the coaching position, and it was, a little overwhelming, very overwhelming. And had I known how big an undertaking it was going to be, maybe, who knows? But it was also this amazing opportunity to kind of implement everything, every idea that you ever had, and there were no guardrails at any point. It could have gone wrong, but we enjoyed doing it, and just kind of like dug in and took care of one problem after another. And so this will be our 5th season, and we've really like built something special here. And so lost track of what the question was, but
no, you were just sharing a little bit more about how the baseball program has come back to life.
yeah.
And I think that's so cool when you take on something where there are no guardrails, right? Where you get to implement your own values, implement your own practice plans. You're not trying to feed off of what somebody else maybe started or built or already has in place. You get to kind of create your own thing. And I think that is truly special.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, for the team this year, how many players are on the team?
In the program?
Yeah.
So in the program, we probably start the season with about 40 kids. The attrition's pretty high. It would be end the season at about 25 or 30. But I mean, for a school our size in the metro to host a varsity and a JV baseball team, given that we weren't playing baseball 5 seasons ago, I mean, that's an accomplishment in its own right. So we're pretty happy.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is incredible. I'm carrying 25 guys. I mean, that's a full roster.
Yeah.
So let's go back to when you first took the job. What was like the biggest challenge that you faced in getting started?
Again, if I had known how big the challenge was, I might have been less confident in my ability to do it. But we really just kind of dug in and took care of one challenge after another. I would say that the real big, like, oh my goodness, what have we gotten ourselves into moment was our first practice. We'd been having some players sign up, but come our first practice, we had 4 players in the room.
No way.
Right. And so I don't know if you know how many people it takes to play a baseball game, but 4 doesn't cut it.
Not
right?
even close.
And so not even half a team. Right. And so you go home after that night, and I mean, we've learned how to make the most of practice, however many kids are there. But you go home from that first night, and you're really thinking to yourself, like, well, geez, I really hope some more kids start to show up.
Yeah,
otherwise,
right?
We're going to be over before we even started. I think, like, on the flip side, the real testament to what we've accomplished here is all 4 of those kids have had an impact on this baseball program through their senior year. And so I kind of equate it to my business, right? It's like, it's a bit of a faucet, and it's like, I might not always, I might not get 10 customers every week. I might only get 1. I got to do what I got to do to keep that customer, right? And so the kids that come through the door, the kids that take me at my word when I say, hey, come on out, try baseball, it's going to be fun, I can't be lying. And unfortunately, too often in like youth baseball, when people say, hey, come on out, it doesn't matter if you don't have experience, we'll teach you at the level you're at and you'll have a good time, it's a lie. And I think that that's where at BC we've really had that success where the kids can kind of like feel the authenticity. They can see how much the adults in the room give of themselves to make this opportunity available to them. And it's getting to the point where maybe some kids don't know our history, but the kids that helped build this program from nothing, they're kind of like the way they carry themselves and how important it is to them, and they'll be back and how important it is going forward. It's just like, I've got a kid, one of the kids that was in that room that first day, played his junior and senior season, and now he's on our coaching staff. And so that's just kind of like the community that we have here. And it's just like, we got to maybe do a little more to bring those kids up. But then on the flip side, you get so much more out of it afterwards. And so that's why we've been successful building up this program when it seems like kind of baseball in the metro is floundering. It seems like schools that had 4 teams have 3, schools that had 3 teams have 2. If they had 2, they have 1. And, we had 0 and now we have 2. And so, I mean, whatever the score is on the scoreboard, that's a win, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting too that, that's a great story. The first 4 kids that showed up had that huge impact on the program. And, when I think about, my time, I coached briefly for it was like 6 weeks at Minneapolis South.
Mm-hmm.
I compare it to very similar to the program that you have now.
Yeah.
Very small roster. Kids that maybe had a year or 2 of even playing any sort of organized baseball. So
yeah.
I kind of understand the challenges that you're going through, and when it comes to building this program, what are some of the essential tools or fundraising? Like, what is it that is important for the continued growth of this program?
It's everything, and I think that's where a lot of ambitious programs in similar situations might have fallen short. Is it's like, it can't just be the skill, it can't just be the facility, it can't just be the players or the coaches or the boosters. It has to be everything. And I feel like we've done a good job of keeping our goals pretty intermediate so that we're accomplishing everything across the spectrum in lockstep, and it's growing together. And I think we do a lot of really taking care of all of the process oriented objectives, and then the result based objectives take care of themselves. I think first and foremost, it starts with the community. It starts with our coaching staff. Our coaches give a lot of themselves. We might ask a little bit more of our coaches. I think a lot of them are just eager and willing to give a little bit more because they understand how important what we're doing here is. And so year after year, our coaching staff continues to grow. We've got people who kind of buy into the cause, and it's just like the players. If I say, hey, come try it out, it's fun. And the guy that, my old players, they come, they help me coach, they come, they have a good time, and then they'll be back, right? If I say, hey, come, it's fun, they come and it's not fun, well, what's the incentive to be back and help us out? Otherwise, we've had some success kind of freshening up our equipment. The equipment was all kind of a little old school, and we needed to get new bats, new helmets, new catcher's gear, new everything. We actually had some luck with writing grants with the Twins Community Fund. Thank you, Kristen Rortvet. We found quite a bit of money to renovate our fields, but we're getting tapped out a little bit. And so we are running a fundraiser currently. If by chance any of you listeners feel our story and might want to help us out, you visit that www.centaurs, CENTAURS, baseball.com. And we would love, any contribution. We spend the money so well, we maximize those dollars and, bring baseball to a kid who likely wouldn't have had the opportunity otherwise. And that's what really speaks to me. At a different program, it's, well, was I any better than the other guy that they could have hired? And here it's the whole thing might not exist without me. So.
No, for sure. It's coaching clinics at Minnetonka. You see, 10 years ago when I was doing the clinics there would be 300 to 500 kids throughout the day that would come in, play, go through the clinics. We're doing fundamentals, we're doing easy stuff, but they had these huge numbers. So if they had 200 kids, choose to play a different sport or, not play baseball, it doesn't really affect them. But, it's like with your program, if you have 10 kids leave your program, that's going to have a huge impact because you're not going to have a huge, population of kids interested in the program to, replace them or at least have numbers to draw from. And, that's where it's so interesting learning a little bit more about the challenges that you face here. I
Yeah.
think that's something that creates a very powerful story for the kids that commit to this program. And like you said, the players that have committed to the program, excuse me, drop my phone. They've continued to have an impact on the program. And like you said, it's like you have to make the game fun, right? In baseball, there is a lot of standing around, so it's like how can you implement practice plans, game plans, and things of that nature, so that you keep the kids wanting more. And that was going to be my next question for you: is how do you actively engage your athletes in the sport?
Well, I'm sure. So we've got 50, 60 years of baseball experience between the two of us. I'm sure we've endured our share of horrible baseball practices.
Yeah.
And so, um, I mean, people treat sports like they are inherently positive, and I think that makes them dangerous. I think if you don't do it with intentionality, and you just assume that it's a good thing, it can become a bad thing. And so we work really hard I mean, first and foremost, some of our kids have needs outside of the game of baseball, and it's really difficult to hold them to the expectations when they haven't eaten breakfast, or trying to say how drive a hard line on attending baseball practice when they're raising their younger siblings. And so we have different challenges than some of the other programs um, in the state. Sometimes I say kind of like we need to do 15 things before we are where other programs kind of start. I know you talked on briefly like how many people might be feeding the Minnetonka system, and that's a really big one. Is it's like a lot of programs, they're just kind of like harnessing and putting the players that they've received places. And we'll get a couple of like, about once a year, a kid that's like, I'm a baseball player, might be do some academy baseball, but a lot of our kids have like at most a year experience, have zero experience. And like, there's two sides to that coin, right? And so it's sure you could get it, like we'd love to get kids with experience, but the kids that you can convince to try it, that take to it, and you teach, you bring them up as ball players. I think that's where it means more to them, right? It wasn't just kind of preordained that they were going to be a varsity ball player in this city, but they became ball players. And I feel like when you pour into the kids like that, when you make that kind of investment in them, they're pretty dang good about like paying you back for that. I mean, not that that's what it's about, but we want to, like, we're all out there, we have similar objectives, right? And so they see me working hard, they see me committing to them, and we're having fun, and you want to be there. And that makes again, kind of like if you take care of the process oriented objectives, the result oriented objectives take care of themselves, right? If you're having fun, why not come back?
Yeah.
Right.
What's interesting is like I try to share this with my McAllister guys. And we talked about this a little bit earlier where today at practice I had to, chat with the team. So the whole group surrounded around me and I'm sharing a little bit more about, my background, and I shared with them, just some mistakes I made in college and how your mistakes don't define who you are, your character does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when your character shows to these athletes that you genuinely care, it's not even about the game anymore. Because the way I look at baseball is it's a game of life.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. It's like you may go 0 for 3 in baseball. It's like, yeah, you may have 3 goals in your life that you may not achieve, but that doesn't define who you are. You have to step back up to the plate and you got to go up there and you got to do it again. And I think that's the ultimate lesson that I always try to teach in baseball is like, it doesn't matter how much you fail. It's like you get back up and you go up there again and you try as hard as you can to be successful in any given moment. And, I hope that, your kids, start to recognize that, like, I'm not just here to be your baseball coach. I'm here to be your mentor. I'm here to be, a father figure if that's what you need. I'm here to be, an ear if you need someone to talk to. It's not just about the game of baseball, right?
And I mean, that's the kind of growth that I try to help my players achieve. It's also the kind of growth that I've experienced on this journey of becoming a baseball coach. And so, you play amateur baseball, I played amateur baseball. And so when I became a baseball coach, I'd been engaging with baseball through that lens. And it's fun sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not like just like as healthy an environment as I'm cultivating here.
Yeah.
To put it politely. At least we weren't. TC Saints, what up? But if, oh my goodness, put me right back on track. What was the question?
So we're chatting just about how we equate baseball to the game of life.
Sure. And so when I started coaching baseball, I was kind of I didn't really have a direction, a ship without a sail, what have you. And like I said, I didn't get involved because I wanted to have the kind of impact that I had. I was a baseball guy. I wanted to be involved with baseball. I wanted to prove that I could do it and that I knew the game. But pretty quickly, it became the connections that I have with the players that I have. And so you mentioned, being a father figure. And I was talking with like one of my close associates, and I was like, hey, it's crazy. It's really starting to dawn on me. That I'm kind of a father figure to some of these kids. And he looked at me like I had two heads.
Yeah.
Because he was on that first baseball team that I coached. He was my best friend's younger brother. He became like a little brother to me. He's lived in my basement for years now. I've been filling that kind of role for him for about a decade. And he's just like, what? How is it that only now you're starting to draw this conclusion when it's kind of this role that you've been playing? And it's like, I'm maybe a little more reluctant to like claim that role than to like the joy and the excitement and just like the person that it's made me to have the opportunity to play that role for kids.
No, that's amazing. And it's like, again, it's like being that positive influence. A lot of times, like, I look back to when I was, in high school. It's like I probably didn't recognize the level of impact some of the coaches had on me. I was fortunate enough to be good enough at baseball where it was like I didn't really have to like worry about all the other stuff happening in the background. It's like I just know if I go out and play, if I play well, if I play poorly, I'm still going to be on the team, right? And it's I dealt with some challenges, in when I was in elementary school, my dad passed away, and then right after I graduated from college, my mom had passed away, and so
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh, it's something that I'm very open about because those were like two of the biggest challenges I had to deal with in life. And it was so interesting because I never looked at my coaches as father figures. I always looked at them as coaches. And I kind of bounced around. When I was in high school, I had a coach up until I was a junior, and then we switched coaches. Then I went to a junior college, had a great coach who was on the team for the first year. We had a great year. Got kicked off the team the second year, and then didn't play for him. So it's like it wasn't really like that father figure type of relationship.
There wasn't a whole lot of consistency there. It sounds like,
right?
And so I think that's probably part of it, right? Where it's like, and I've noticed this about coaching. Whereas when I coached at Central, I kind of came up with that first group of kids that I coached.
Yeah.
And then since I've coached at BC, I came up with that first group of kids, and then every group's special, right? But never am I ever going to have that opportunity to pour as much of my time and energy into that group of kids that was the only group of kids that was here, right? because now our program's bigger, and I might not coach the JV, I don't coach the JV kids as much, right? And so I do think that, like, okay, always every group that's special, but that first group, there's that, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but the connection there, especially to have, like I said, built this program ourselves, um, tended to the fields, been bad our first year, we went 0-13, got mercy ruled every game except one because it rained out because it like ended because of
It's
rain.
like the Bull Durham
It
moment,
was
like,
like
let's pray
mercy.
for rain.
That was the real mercy. So it rains, and so that game wasn't a mercy rule. But just kind of like, you talking about where you were coming from and what your expectations were. I feel like these kids, when they had to build it, their appreciation for it in the moment might have been a little greater. And sometimes, like I said, there weren't many checks or balances. We didn't have guardrails. We didn't know what we were doing. We just had ambition and ideas. But did like no one to tell you were doing it right or wrong. You could just feel it. And then in the last couple of years, we've really started to have a lot of that pouring in from parents who just know what this program means to me and to their kids and to them, and players. Like you figure maybe in 20 years a kid comes back and says, hey, now I see what you did for me. But I've got graduates. I mean, I've got kids, freshmen in college, kid's a Marine now, and we're in touch, and we're talking about how meaningful the things that we've done together are. And I mean, I wouldn't trade the world for those relationships. Yeah.
I mean, that's such a special bond to have with kids too. And it's like, you want to have that bond with every kid, but that's just not reality, right? But I think building something from scratch, there's something really special about that, because I think it goes back to when we talked about, when you, like you said, no guardrails in place, you don't necessarily know what you're doing, but you're gonna figure it out along the way. I think that really, like, it really means a lot to, like, what our rise and go message is. Like, just because you don't know what you're doing doesn't mean you don't try anyways, right?
Well, right. And every kid is different, right? And so we try really hard to meet the kids at the level that they're at, and that's not just on the baseball field, right? And so every kid has needs, but they're different. And so we serve a pretty diverse population. Brooklyn Center it's the most diverse city in the state of Minnesota. And this has been kind of undergoing that change, it seems, for about 25 years. And it's kind of this interesting case study where Brooklyn Center is this first-ring suburb north of North Minneapolis, and in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were like winning conference titles and pushing for state, making state title runs or state appearances. And demographically, things really started to change in the area around the 2000s. And it just seems to, I mean, if you look at it, just like coincide with this like collapse of the baseball program. And I think that really starts to kind of push at some of the issues, kind of like pertaining to the achievement gap in baseball, or like, what is it that makes baseball available to kids? Or why is it that some kids in some communities take to it and some kids don't? And I suppose, I guess, as a Black man with a pretty prolific baseball career, I'm curious if you've contemplated why you think it is that maybe young Black kids aren't as engaged with the game as baseball as they used to be.
That's a great question. I really look at, like, role models in, the Black community. A lot of it's going to be NBA players, LeBron James. In our community, it's like Anthony Edwards. There's not a lot of prolific. I was gonna say, I saw the AEs earlier, but when I think about baseball, like, who are the best players in baseball? It's like, Aaron Judge. He could be a great role model, but it's a lot of it's either Latin ball players, white ball players, and so the people that the young Black community probably looks up to play other sports, primarily football and basketball. And I do think basketball is probably the most accessible sport on the planet. All you need is a pair of shoes and a basketball, and you can find a guy. When I drove in here, I saw the courts out there. I was
it's growing, and it's
Yeah.
growing internationally. But I think Mookie Betts might want to have a word with you.
maybe he will. Maybe he will. But I think that within the community, I think it goes even just beyond the sport. It's like like if you look at hip hop music, the primary like resources that they talk about is probably either NBA, NFL. They don't talk a lot about
it.
MLB.
Is kind of funny looking back on like some media from about 20 years ago. You didn't really notice it in the moment, but how more often, The Simpsons or, your mainstream media was like going to baseball as like a spectator sport.
Yeah.
As like Malcolm in the Middle, the kids are playing baseball. And it's like, it really doesn't come up that much anymore.
Right.
If you're trying to sell something, if you want it to be hot, it's not baseball. And I mean, it's unfortunate because it's such a fantastic game. But yeah, it doesn't have the same flair that it used to.
I mean, I think they're trying to bring it back. But to answer your question as well, when I was young, I was adopted, and I was taken out of a very poor situation, and I was put into a predominantly white community. And I'll never forget this, but I went to grade school at Tanglin Elementary. The first book that I took out of the library there was it was like a picture book, but it was a story of Kirby Puckett. And so that is what got me hooked on baseball. And then my sister had a DVD of the 1991 World Series, Twins against the Braves, and I must have watched that 10,000 times. And that is immediately where I fell in love with the game of baseball. And again, I think young African American kids, they a lot of them that come from a similar situation as me haven't been afforded a lot of the same opportunities that I have been afforded. And I think that's has a big impact on what sports the kids in the Black community decide to play. But I think baseball's kind of like I think it's growing a little bit, but I still think it has a long ways to go to have a larger impact on the African American community.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, I think it's interesting to look at because, right, like Latin America is a baseball hotbed.
Yeah, right.
And but they get good at the game, not in the same fashion that American baseball players get good in the game, right? Like in America, it is really expensive. I mean, there are expenses related to becoming a ball player in the Dominican as well. They do the baseball academy thing. It's a bit more of like a full-fledged commitment from the jump, but like it's about access in my opinion, right? And so it's interesting that you said it, where it's like I think about like playing the game or having access to play the game, or I mean, you said it's a book you found in the library.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll be in the library over here putting in a bunch of baseball books.
Yeah,
so
why not?
And then I mean, even a little furthermore, I got one of my the players I got really, really close to graduated last year, senior, and he was telling me that he really started to enjoy baseball, got interested to play baseball, playing a video game, not hits, or
I think
I don't know,
MLB the show or something,
but like the super animated one,
Sure.
where it's like, I don't know, like the equivalent to Blitz or what have you. So,
Okay.
So yeah, even like the notion of like putting it on someone's radar, right? Is it's like maybe I don't know. I joke sometimes we get kids and we're working on baseball and it's the indoor portion of the season. And then we go outside and the kid's like, wait, baseball's played outside?
Yeah.
Because it's like, who's even watching? Who
Right.
knows the rules? And it's like, maybe you played some kickball or you played a little softball in Phi Ed class, but it's like, are you even familiar with the game before
Right.
you're making a decision whether or not you might be interested to play it? So,
Well, and I also think baseball is a very skill driven game. I think it's one of the most difficult sports to actively get good at if you've never played it. I think about if I were to go out and play hockey right now, I don't even know how to skate. And
Yeah.
so why would I even go out there if I can't do one of the most basic skills? And with baseball, it's like hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do in sports. Now, if you're underhand throwing it, that's different. But if you're facing someone that's throwing, really hard, 90 miles an hour,
Yeah.
your chances of hitting that baseball, if you don't have any experience, are basically none.
Well, right, and it's a pretty specialized skill. Whereas, like, I mean, even like the throwing portion of the game and the catching portion of the game, most sports, like aspects of life, you develop those kinds of skills somewhere along the line. But like grabbing a weapon and hitting a baseball with
Yeah.
it, and grabbing that baton and being able to hit the ball is hard. That said, I remember feeling that way, and I will just like counter that with just football players.
Yeah.
With football players, because we'll have a few football players try it out, and some of them it's not for them. They don't take to it, but it always takes to them.
Sure.
And we're talking like linemen, and our linemen are faster than you'd expect, and they just like, I remember thinking that it was like this skill that you needed to be cultivating for 13 years. And the problem was just that I hadn't been playing football, because these kids pick it up really quickly.
Right.
And actually kind of transitions into a slightly deeper topic of conversation that I was hoping to get to. This off season, I received one of maybe the worst phone call of my life. It was the AD, and he let me know that one of my players had drowned in an accident while swimming. And so that was Emmanuel Seward Jr., affectionately known as EMan, and he was a fantastic football player first and foremost. And I actually met EMan in this very room. We spent a lot of time together in here. He would, at first, was just kind of availing himself of the baseball weight rooms in order to lift for football. But if his buddy Gabriel was capable of playing baseball, what's going to stop him from playing, right? And so it couldn't be that difficult, could it? If Gabe can do it, I can do it. He was right. He was a natural. He spent his first season practicing. He wasn't eligible to play because of his grades. And any kid, most kids, you figure they probably hang it up right then and there. He kept coming to practice, and he practiced all summer. And then it was football season, and I think he was 165, and he played defensive end. He was the strongest kid you've ever met. 17 years old, 165, and he could deadlift 475.
Wow.
He was a tank, and the athleticism certainly helped. He was fast, and he was strong, and he could hit the ball hard. And you see him like cultivating these skills. The day football ended, him and Gabriel, they said, "Hey, let's start weight rooms." How do you say no to that, right? When your kids want to get stronger, when they want to get better, you say, "All right, I'll be there."
Yeah, time and place, man.
We must have spent 100 hours in here. And by that second year, me and Gabriel, I'm really close with Gabriel and EMan, and I'm starting to get to know him, and Coach Ted. And sure, some other people would be in here pretty consistently, but we were always in here, and they were lifting and we weren't lifting. Just, lifting, but mostly just hanging out and being guys and having fun. And it's when I got to know him. It's when I really got to know him. And he had this mischievous smirk and a little chipped tooth. And you didn't know, maybe he did something good. Maybe he did something bad. It's that same little smile. And I love my players. If you play for me, I love you. That's just how it is. I think that it used to be not how you were supposed to coach. It was supposed to be like they're supposed to respect you, but you're not supposed to be friends or what have you. And I think that was such a dereliction of responsibility there. If you play for me, I love you. Is it where I start the conversation? No. Will I tell you eventually if it feels appropriate? Absolutely. And I would give EMan's rides home. We'd stop at the gas station. We'd get chips, whatever. I'd drop him off and I'd tell him I'd love him. And it wasn't without some apprehension, because he's a 16, 17-year-old boy. That could be awkward, right? But I took the shot, and I do it with my players. And some of them may, I think they like to hear it. They might not say it back. They might not say it back immediately. It's not an expectation. But I'm so glad that I did, because I think that kids in general, kids in my program on average, they are more likely not hearing it enough than hearing it too much. And so he taught me so much. He persevered. His second year, um, we were in the weight room, and it so happened to be conferences. And so I started pestering him about it, and we get about halfway through the weight room, and I'm like, all right, man, we're going to conferences. And we go and we visit with his teachers. And I let him kind of pick three, because you don't change completely overnight, right? But he picks three teachers, four classes, and the consensus is that his attitude towards school has been changing entirely. And so this kid who wanted to lift because he was a football player, who played baseball because his buddy did, because he wanted to lift, who started doing his schoolwork because he wanted to be eligible to play baseball, because he wanted to lift to play football, right? And so he was just getting started. He was figuring it out. He was figuring it out so quickly, and like, there's nothing I wouldn't give to spend 10 minutes yelling at him to get his dang cleats on in the dugout this season, right? And so, he's the kind of kid. He's the kid that I do it for. He's the kid I do it for. His buddy Gabriel's the kid that I do it for. Everybody in my program is the kid that I do it for. And I love you all. And some kids just need a little additional support, and just to be able to be that person that's there when a kid takes the risk, takes the chance to be vulnerable, to be available, to seek out a little support, or to be open to receiving support. Again, to kind of like make good, to say when you tell a kid, hey, I'm here for you, you can talk to me, I've got your back, that when it's time for that you aren't lying to them, right? Yeah. And so I miss you, EMan. I love you, dude. And this season's for you.
As I say, you got me choked up here, man. That is such a powerful story. And, that is, a why, like behind why you show these kids that you genuinely care and that you genuinely love them. Because again, it's like, they may leave your program, they may not come back, but it's like, you never know. Life is so short, terrible things happen every day. And, to have that bond with him, to share that love with him, that's something that you're never going to forget for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And, it makes me think too, because with my McAllister players, it's like I share that same bond with them. It's like I tell them I love them. If there's anything that they need, do not hesitate to ask, no matter how hard it is. You can trust me, not only as your coach, but as your friend, as a brother, as a father figure, whatever you need. And I think that's what has really hooked me into coaching, is those relationships that you form with these young men, that you're trying to help them grow. You're helping to provide them with wisdom along the pathway of life, because life is hard. And, I'm still like, trying to gather myself here, because I didn't know the depth of, how powerful that story of EMan and how close you were to him. And
well, I really kind of felt like sharing, because, besides Gabriel, Coach Ted, and I, people don't know. And so it wouldn't feel like, I appreciate the opportunity to get that story, tell some of my story.
Yeah.
Tell some of our story, because hopefully there's some people that get the opportunity to hear it that wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And, around these hallways, there's just like so many people that miss him so dearly and loved him so much. And it's the why. It's like I said, I didn't get into it for the connections with the kids, but it's why I'm here, right? It's why I stayed, and it has helped me become the kind of person that I want to be. And it's what our program's about. It's about helping kids achieve the kinds of objectives that they want to achieve, be it on the baseball field or outside of the baseball field. Almost more so off of the baseball field, because these kids, we had our first college commit in over a decade, and that's fantastic. But everybody else we've graduated out of this program, is in college, is at trade school, has become a mechanic, has joined the Marines. And, last year we had a phenomenal catcher, a senior, Gabriel, EMan's good buddy. And he had interest to play college baseball. He was talking to like St. Cloud Tech, and they're a fantastic JUCO in the area. And I wanted him to play baseball. And he tells me that he'd given it a bunch of consideration and he was going to be joining the Marines. And I'm just, he was in town over Christmas break, and I went out bowling with him and his family, mi familia, and I beat you, Gabe. and he made the right decision for himself. He's in line to be a squad leader, and you can just see the transformation that he continues to be. He's no longer big bushy hair. It's so short, and short hair, a little bit up.
Yeah.
But that I was preparing him not to be a college baseball player so much as I was preparing him to make the decision to choose to be a Marine instead of go to college, play college baseball, and that it's paying off for him, right? And so, again, it's about the kids, it's about the objectives, it's about building their confidence and esteem and putting them in a position where they can thrive beyond high school, where the lessons that they learned on the baseball field work in their favor when life, hits after high school. And it does really quick with some kids in some of these situations where if you're not seizing on the opportunities that you have after high school, well, the security net disappears pretty dang quickly. And so to be graduating, considerate, compassionate, dedicated, students who want to work hard and have goals and ambitions and drive on the baseball field, yes, but more so off the baseball field. I mean, that's why I do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't why I started doing it, but it's why I do it now.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how baseball is a game of life. You get to play the game for X amount of time, but the lessons you learn, the relationships that you form, and the challenges that you overcome, those are going to take you, those are great life lessons for what you're going to face after your baseball career is over. But no, I think this is a tremendous segue into, the rise and go discussion. Why, I should say, what makes you rise and go to get up every single day to do what you do?
Yeah, right. I mean, we talked on it a little earlier, where it was like, I was 24, working part-times, renting a house out with 4 or 5 other guys, playing amateur ball, and I didn't really have a direction. And so I took a shot on coaching baseball. I could use some more money. I know the game. It seems like a good challenge for me to make a few $1,000s. I know I could identify with the kids because it's when I used to thrive. I loved to do it, right? And I had this sense of I've been to enough bad baseball practices to know how not to do it, right? And so I took to it immediately, and it became this big central thing in the middle of my life that, I wasn't in despair. I wasn't, life wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. And it became this just gigantic good thing in the middle of my life. And it was social, and it was exercise, and it was community building, and it was all of these positives. And it just became something that I needed to do. And when it ended, I couldn't wait for the next season to begin. And when I was starting a business, it needed to accommodate baseball season. And when, I had a ledger full of ideas on ways I would run the program if I was in charge, by the time it was bursting at the seams, I needed to take that shot on myself. And I mean, even just that's a positive to say, hey, I've grown out of my fishbowl, and I need to find a bigger pond because I have these ideas. I'm going to take a shot on myself. And literally, when I took the position at BC, it was me and Ted and a pitching machine and a program that hadn't existed for 3 years. And it was just like, well, you know what? This is the challenge that's going to build me up. We'll take it, 6 steps at a time. And I mean, Ted and I played baseball together and we were cool, but it's how we became close. I have former players that a former player lives in my basement. I've got, they're friends of mine. They're on my coaching staff. They help me shovel snow. I've taught some of them to run their own businesses. I mean, it's been everything, right? It's my community. It's where I've made friends. Chef, Coach John, Coach Mom. So it's like it's been this amazing community where I can both expand my personal community inside of it and bring my community to get involved with it. And all of it is positive and makes you feel good and does right by people who deserve it. And I can't encourage people to do it enough. Sign up, come hit me up, help out, come catch a game, and just, make something positive out of nothing, right? Like I'm a builder. I make my own business. I made my own program. I write my own Dungeons and Dragons stories. It's, I don't want to sign up for your volunteer experience. I want to make my own, right?
Sure.
And so just to have this something as special, something that's come way further than we ever could have expected, that involves all of the people that are the most important people to me and my kids. That's what gets me going in the morning.
I mean, that's world changing, man. And it's like finding like your thing. I always think that's something that's important. And I feel like there's a lot of people in this world that are searching for their thing, and I think that's the message behind Rise and Go. It's like, hopefully one day you find something or a dream that you are willing to get up every day out of bed and rise and go and chase that dream. But no, that was an amazing conversation. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I want to thank you again
Absolutely.
for taking the time to join us on the podcast here. Before we jump here, tell everyone where they can find the Brooklyn Center baseball program.
Yeah. That'll be on Facebook at Brooklyn Center High School Baseball, or www.centaursbaseball.com. CENTAURS. It's on the sign, right?
Yeah, I was just looking over there too.
Or hey, you need your lawn mowed, you need it aerated, you need a little snow shoveling. Pitman Lawn Care. www.pitmanlawns.com.
Awesome. Hey, man, thank you again. And for our listeners, you can take in this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and all streaming platforms. Again, Kevin Pitman, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Awesome. Good work.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much time we got on here.
Hey, thanks for helping me through it, because I get a little